Hello students, this is a short note, okay? Write a short note on facial artery and facial vein, and then it is what is danger or dangerous area of the face. Thus this is the blood vessels on the face. The most prominent blood vessels on the face are facial artery and facial vein. So first I will describe the facial artery in face on the face, and then I will take the facial vein, and then we will deal with the danger area of the face. Let us come to the answer. The facial artery in face. Okay, if we see the facial artery in face, in an introduction we can say that face is richly supplied by the blood. Okay, it is having lot of the blood vessels. Many blood vessels are there which freely anastomosis with each other. Thus the face is very rich in blood supply, and these are through many arteries, not only facial artery, but there are the other arteries also present on the face. And but the facial artery is the chief artery of the face, as we will see just now. Okay, the main blood supply of the face comes from the facial artery. Let us come to the origin, and then I will talk about the course. Okay, then so first come to the origin of the facial artery. It is a branch of the external carotid artery. Okay, branch from external carotid artery, which is given off in the carotid triangle. So within the carotid triangle, this branch, that is the facial artery, takes origin. So it is a branch from the external carotid artery. Then it runs in the neck, and then it come to the submandibular region. So from this region of the carotid triangle, it comes to the submandibular region, and then it enters the face. So this, I'm not going in the detail of the its course in cervical region. Okay, just because we are dealing with the facial artery on the face itself. So this is the origin. Okay, and now we come to the course of this artery in the face. It enters the face by winding round the base of the mandible, okay, lower border of the mandible. So it winds round the lower border or the base of the mandible, very close or just at the antero-inferior angle of the masseter muscle. Okay, I will just show you in the diagram. The antero-inferior angle of the masseter. Let us see this diagram. And here we are seeing that facial artery on the face. This I have just drawn the masseter muscle, and this is the anterior border of the masseter muscle, and this is the antero-inferior angle of the masseter muscle. Just at the in front of the antero-inferior angle, this artery just it winds round the lower border or the base of the mandible, okay, as it is also called as, okay, at the antero-inferior angle. Now here this artery will pierce, okay, it will come to the face after piercing the deep cervical fascia. As you know that face has no deep fascia, it is present only in the neck region, which is called as the deep cervical general investing layer. So it will pierce the deep cervical fascia, which is attached at the margin of the base of the mandible. So very close to this base or the lower margin, it will pierce this deep cervical fascia to lie in the superficial fascia of the face. So then it will lie and run in the that means just deep to the skin where superficial fascia is present, as there is no deep fascia. So it is running between the layers of the muscle. Okay, so I hope that you have understood how this facial artery will come to the face. Let me show you this, okay, with the diagram from this dissector. Now let me show you. This is the theme dissector written by me for this volume number 3, head and neck. Okay, and here let us see the artery. Here in this you can see that this is the external carotid artery. This is the external, and in the carotid triangle, this is that branch which is taking origin from external carotid artery is the facial artery. Then it lies in the submandibular region, and now at the anterior margin of the masseter muscle, which is here, attached here, this pierces the deep fascia of the neck, that is general investing layer of the deep cervical fascia, and after winding down the base or the lower margin of the mandible, it comes into the face, and then its course is there inside the face. Let us see its course in the face, okay, with this diagram, and I will come back to this diagram again from the dissector. I am thankful to the theme for using this diagram from the theme, okay. Let us see. It runs upward and forward to near the angle of the mouth. Then after this crossing here from this at the antero-inferior angle of masseter, then it runs forwards as well as upward, very close to the angle of the mouth, okay, and this is around about half an inch away from the angle of the mouth. That is, away means lateral, okay. There is this artery is going, but it is close to the angle of the mouth. Then it ultimately reaches to the medial angle of the eye. Here it is the eye, and it reaches to the medial angle of the eye. Here it terminates. See these terminal branches? Here it terminates by anastomosing with that of the dorsal nasal branch of the ophthalmic artery. So I will write down here as dorsal nasal branch of the ophthalmic artery, okay. So from the dorsal nasal branch of that of the ophthalmic artery, and ophthalmic artery is given inside the cranial cavity by the internal carotid. So it is a branch of the dorsal nasal branch, is a branch from internal carotid artery, while I just told you that the facial artery is a branch from the external carotid given in the carotid triangle of the neck, okay. Now, as after it anastomosing with the dorsal nasal branch of the ophthalmic artery, then this artery will end here at the medial angle of the eye and will communicate with the dorsal nasal branch. Now then, this artery, if you will see the whole course from antero-inferior angle of the masseter, from the base of the mandible to that of the medial angle of the eye, you will notice that this artery is not straight, it is tortuous, okay. Though I have shown you a less tortuosity, but it is with the more tortuosity in comparison to as it is shown in this diagram, okay, in this diagram. Now here, while it is running from the mandible to that of the medial angle of the eye, this artery runs between the superficial and deep muscles of face, okay, facial muscle, okay, superficial and deep muscles which are going to attach to the mostly to the skin of the face, okay, superficial, and thus it is partly under cover of the muscles of the face which are quite thin, and sometimes it lies superficial to these muscles of the face, and this artery, as I said, is tortuous artery, okay. Now let us come to the branches of this facial artery. Just I will write here the facial artery in face, okay. This is facial artery. Let us come to the branches. The branches are three major named branches are there, but then there are many unnamed branches. You can see thin branches, okay. They are running to posterior side, okay, from their origin, and they are also running towards the anterior side after there, and there is no name given because they are multiple and they don't take origin from a very specific point. But then three branches, they are very constant and quite big, okay, prominent branches. And this is the first branch which goes towards the lower lip, and this is called as the inferior labial branch. Okay, then one branch goes towards the, goes in the superior lip, and this is called as superior labial. This is called as superior labial branch. So inferior labial and the superior labial are the branches which will go towards the lip. They are quite prominent branches, okay, prominent branches. And then a branch above this is given which is called as the lateral nasal, because it goes from the nasal to the nose on its lateral side. Hence it is called as, so easy to remember, inferior labial, superior labial and lateral nasal, and here it terminates by anastomosing with that of the dorsal nasal branch of the ophthalmic artery. Okay, and then unnamed muscular and other branches which are going posterior to the artery or anterior to the artery. So these are the branches. Let us see the anastomosis of this. At the medial angle of the eye, I have shown that this will anastomose with that of this dorsal nasal branch of the ophthalmic artery. Okay, ophthalmic artery, dorsal nasal branch. Now let me show you again the same diagram where we can see the various anastomosis more clearly. You can see here the dorsal nasal branch is here, which will join with that of the beginning of the facial artery, and at the beginning this is called as angular artery. So the beginning of the facial artery at the medial angle of the eye is also called as angular artery. So with which branches it is anastomosing? It is anastomosing with that of the angular, with that of the at the medial angle with that of the branches of the external carotid artery. So it is anastomosing with the branches of the external carotid artery, and these are the dorsal nasal, and it may also anastomose with the supraorbital branch. So in turn it may, so that there is an anastomosis with the branches of the ophthalmic artery, okay, with that of the terminal end of the facial artery, which is here called as the angular artery. Okay, so this is one important anastomosis, and you should remember that this is the anastomosis between the ophthalmic and the facial artery. Ophthalmic is branch from internal carotid, and this facial is a branch from the external. So this is a communication between or anastomosis between the external and the internal carotid artery. Now then, another communication is with that of the infraorbital. This is the infraorbital foramina, and then this infraorbital foramina will give the branch called as the infraorbital arteries. I will just draw here. So from the infraorbital artery the branches are coming which may form, so this is an infraorbital artery, okay, in this diagram. This I will just label it as the infraorbital branch. So this is just below the inferior orbital margin, infraorbital artery. And this infraorbital artery will also have its communication with that of the facial artery, okay, with the facial artery. Then another important communication is with that of the superior and inferior labial branches, okay, onto the opposite side. This superior and inferior labial, I said that they are very prominent arteries, and their branches across the midline will anastomose with that of the superior and inferior labial artery of the opposite side, So see here in this diagram, this anastomosis, you can just appreciate that the superior labial is crossing the midline, so the inferior labial, so it will have the anastomosis with that of the opposite side artery beside this infraorbital. Then there is one more artery coming here, which is a branch from the superficial temporal artery, and this is the transverse facial artery. Okay, this is the transverse facial artery, and this transverse facial artery will have the anastomosis with that of the facial branches. Okay, posterior branches of the facial. But then you will have another anastomosis with that of the branch coming out through the mantle artery. So mantle artery is coming from the mantle foramina, and it will have anastomosis with the inferior labial artery. What you have seen that there is a vast anastomosis, okay, very prominent anastomosis among the arteries which are present in the face, and that's why in the beginning I said that the face is supplied richly with that of the arterial blood. It is richly, and this you must have noticed that even a small cut in the skin of the face bleeds very profusely. Okay, and this is the region that the face is richly supplied with that of the blood. Okay, it's supplied with the blood. This completes the facial artery, its branches, and the sites of its anastomosis. Let us now go to that of the facial vein. So now we go to the facial vein, which runs along with that of the facial artery. So this facial vein, if we just learn it and the introduction, we can say that it is the main vein of the face. Okay, it is the main vein of the face, and it is formed by the union of the supraorbital and supratrochlear vein at the medial angle of the eye. Just I will draw its formation at the medial angle of the eye. This is the supratrochlear, and this is the supraorbital vein, and these veins will unite to form they have united with each other at the medial to form the vein which is the facial vein. Okay, so it is how this vein, let me write here supratrochlear and supraorbital. Supratrochlear vein, and this is the supraorbital. Okay, this will also go or communicate with that of the superior ophthalmic vein. Okay, this supraorbital and supratrochlear. But here after union they will also form, or you may say that it will communicate with that of the or drain into the facial vein. Okay, then now it begins as angular vein. Okay, we have seen that there was an angular artery. In the similar way, this is the beginning of the facial vein is as an angular vein. So I will write down here as angular vein. So there was angular artery to begin with. So this is the angular vein. Then it will runs downward and backward. The artery was going upwards and forward. In opposite way, this vein will come to the same point, that means to the antero-inferior angle of masseter at the base of the mandible. But this vein will run straight. Straight. The vein will run straight and away from a little away or posterior to that of this facial artery. But it will it will also pierce the deep cervical fascia, just at the margin of the mandible to go in the neck, to go inside the neck. So this is the straight course of the facial vein. So from angular vein, now it is the facial vein. This is the face lying posterior to that of and running along with the tortuous facial artery. But this vein is not tortuous. It is straight. It is has a straight course. It lies after antero-inferior angle of the masseter. Here, as I said, it will pierce the deep fascia, and after crossing to that of the submandibular vein, then it will cross the submandibular, not the vein but the gland. Then it will cross the submandibular gland deep to the mandible, okay, under surface of the mandible, and join with the division of the retromandibular vein. It will join with that of the retromandibular vein. I will just draw the retromandibular vein here where it will join, though it is the part of the neck, but you should understand how this will form, okay, what is called as the common facial vein. Here is a vein which is the superficial temporal vein, okay. The blood comes from superficial temporal vein and then it is joined by that of the maxillary vein. So this is, say for example, the union site between superficial temporal and this is the maxillary vein here. Both they unite to form what is called as the retromandibular, because it will lie just behind the neck and then the ramus of the mandible. So this is called as the retromandibular vein. Okay, just note down here the retromandibular vein. And this retromandibular vein lower down to the level below the level of the auricle, it will divide into two branches, an anterior and a posterior division of the retromandibular vein. This is the anterior division and here will go the posterior division of the retro. The anterior division will unite with that of the facial vein to form what is called as the common facial vein. And the posterior division of this retromandibular vein here will join with a vein coming from above behind the auricle. Hence it is called as the posterior auricular vein. So posterior auricular vein and the posterior division of the retromandibular vein, they will unite here and will form the external jugular vein. So I will give the name here as external jugular vein of the neck. Okay, you must have seen in the neck. And this is the posterior auricular, as it lies posterior to auricle. And this is the retromandibular vein. Just I will name it here, retromandibular, just aim, okay, retromandibular, which divides into the posterior division and this is the anterior division of retromandibular, and this will unite with the facial vein and this will form the common facial vein. This will form common facial vein, okay, in which our facial vein is draining. This takes place just behind the angle of the mandible within the neck, and then this will immediately drain into a large vein here, and that is this is called as the internal jugular vein. This large vein in which it will open common facial is called as the internal jugular vein. I will just give the name IJV, internal jugular vein. Just remember it. This is the internal jugular vein, and external jugular vein will go down below into the root of near the root of the neck. Okay, just I am drawing it irregular here, and this will open into a vein which is called as the subclavian vein. This is the subclavian vein. So the external jugular vein will go and drain into the subclavian. So I have covered almost all the part of the facial, I mean to say drainage of the face, okay, venous drainage of the face, but our concentration should be there here onto the facial vein. Okay, now, okay, so now the common facial vein has formed here. Okay, let us see what is important communication of this, okay, facial vein, important communication of this facial vein. Let us see it. Okay, these communications are like that here, okay, superior ophthalmic vein is joining through the supraorbital vein. Okay, it is joined through the supraorbital vein to the superior ophthalmic vein. So that means facial vein is in communication with the superior ophthalmic vein which runs in the orbit. Okay, it runs into the above the eyeball. Superior, okay, ophthalmic vein, okay, superior ophthalmic, through the supraorbital vein it will communicate. Okay, then second communication, remember this communication with the superior supraorbital vein, okay. And second communication is with the deep facial vein. Okay, let us see the deep facial vein. Now the deep facial vein will communicate here with that of the facial vein here, and then this will open into the deep facial vein, will go deep and will open into a plexus, and this plexus is known as the pterygoid venous plexus. Let me show you. If it is there, I will show you this presence of, so that you can better understand. Okay, yes, it is here from the same theme dissector, okay, written by me. Okay, so here you can see that this is the, you can see here, this is the facial vein, okay, from angular vein, okay, this is the angular vein, see, and here its communication with the supraorbital and supratrochlear has formed this angular vein, which is the beginning of the facial vein, and on one side it is also communicating with the superior ophthalmic vein and with that of the inferior ophthalmic vein. This superior and inferior ophthalmic vein, they will drain the blood inside the cranial cavity into a sinus called as the cavernous sinus. And then here you can see this is the deep facial vein. Okay, this vein which you are seeing here, it is the deep facial vein which is communicating with that of the facial vein. This is known as the deep. And if you will see here, okay, in the deeper part of the infratemporal fossa, you can see a plexus of vein, and this plexus of vein is called as the pterygoid because it lies onto the pterygoid muscle, close to the pterygoid muscle. Hence it is called as the pterygoid venous plexus. Then from this pterygoid venous plexus, a emissary vein will be formed, which will go inside the cranial cavity again to drain into the cavernous sinus, where the superior and inferior ophthalmic veins are going to the cavernous. So from this, both the root from the deep facial vein and from superior and inferior ophthalmic vein, ultimately this is in communication with the cavernous sinus, which is located inside the cranial cavity by the side of the sphenoid, bone. Then you can see that this straight facial vein will also come here to the lower margin of that of the mandible, close to the facial artery. But this course is straight, and then it will join to that of the anterior division of the retromandibular vein, okay, to form the common facial vein. This is that common facial vein is here. Okay, this is the anterior division of the retromandibular vein, which will open into the internal jugular vein. It will open into the internal jugular vein. Okay, so this is how the communication of the vein is there, that is facial vein. So the communication is with that of the cavernous sinus, that means through the deep facial vein and through the superior ophthalmic and the inferior ophthalmic vein. Ultimately the communication is with that of the cavernous sinus. Let us come to the applied importance of this communication with that of the cavernous sinus. And before that, let us see what is danger area of the face or dangerous area of the face. The upper lip and the lower lip of the nose are considered as the lower part of the nose. They are considered as the danger area of the face. See in this diagram, this is the upper lip part and then this is the lower. Okay, we need not to go to that much high. This much part, the lower part of the nose and the upper lip, they are called as the danger area of the face. Okay, the danger area of the face. And why they are called as, then I will just explain. These areas are drained by facial vein. Okay, as we have seen, they are drained by the facial vein. Okay, through the superior ophthalmic vein, and it opens into the cavernous sinus. The deep facial vein also communicate with the pterygoid venous plexus, which in turns drain into the cavernous sinus through the emissary vein. See here, this is the superior ophthalmic vein inside the orbit, okay, and this is the inferior, and most of the time both the veins they open in this cavernous sinus, which is situated in the middle cranial fossa by the side of the sphenoid bone, okay, by the side. So this is, and then this will also through the pterygoid venous plexus, which is not shown here, but it will through the emissary vein. This will also open into that of the cavernous sinus. So this, I mean to say, communication which is draining to that of the face skin, especially of the lower lip, especially of the upper lip and the lower part of the nose, okay, into the cavernous sinus through emissary vein. As the facial vein is valvulus, there is no wall, okay, because these veins they have to drain towards the gravity to the heart, hence there is no wall. The veins which are below the level of the heart, okay, say for example in trunk and the lower limb, they have the valves, okay. So here the blood will flow in the facial vein in both the direction. It may go from facial vein to the ophthalmic vein, it may go from facial vein to the deep facial vein, then into the cavernous sinus, or the blood may come from cavernous sinus towards the superior ophthalmic vein or inferior and to the facial vein also. So there is a, I mean to say, the flow is in both the direction, okay, two-way flow is there, okay, of the blood. And if there is any infection of the upper lip or the nose, okay, lower part of the nose, then this infection may reach to the cavernous sinus, because the blood can flow from lower down, that is from lower lip to the base of this, I mean say in the cranial cavity, which is against the gravity, okay, upward direction, and this may lead into the sinus. While you are lying down on the bed, this flow can go through the cavernous sinus through these two communication, okay, and this infection may lead into the, I mean say, reach into the cavernous sinus, and then due to the infection a thrombosis or the blood clot may take place of the cavernous. So the flow of this venous blood through this cavernous sinus may stop, and the infection, if it is spread, it may press to the nerves of the cavernous sinus. There are many nerves which are running through the lateral wall, okay, and below that of the internal carotid artery, the trochlear nerve, abducent nerve, the oculomotor nerve, okay, the maxillary part also anteriorly, ophthalmic nerve, they are all going through the cavernous sinus. This may lead a pressure onto these nerves, okay, and then these nerves may show the effect, okay. What effect is may be there? Because most of these nerves are going and supplying to the extraocular muscle. So the movements of the extraocular muscle may be affected, okay. But this infection mostly occur from the upper lip and the lower part of the nose by pressing the pimples, because pimples contain the pus, that means bacteria, and thus this infection may go through this route to the cavernous sinus. And the thrombosis of cavernous sinus is very dangerous because it is deeply situated. Surgically it is most difficult to remove this thrombus or blood clot, okay. From there you can control the infection nowadays with the antibiotic, but once the thrombus is formed here, the blood clot is there, this will be difficult to be remembered. So this area of the face, that's why is called as the dangerous area of the face, which thus we should not press our pimples which are present in the face, especially in the upper lip and in the nose, okay. This completes the, I mean to say, facial artery in face and the facial vein and the dangerous area. Thank you very much for watching this video.